OK, well, let's look into all of these latest developments now with Ahmed Bedier, who's here in the studio with us. He's the political analyst and president of United Voices for America. That's a civic engagement organisation based in Washington, D.C. A very warm welcome to you, Ahmed.
Thank you.
So, as we've been saying, we've hit the 2-month mark in this conflict so far, and you've described what's happening in Gaza as, quote, a race against time by Israel to cause as much destruction as possible and depopulate the Strip before Western powers pull the plug. What do you mean by that?
Pressure is mounting against Israel because of the death tolls and the carnage that we're seeing. People are shocked by the images coming out of Gaza. Many didn't expect that they would go this far, and now the Netanyahu regime is trying to do as much destruction as they can, with the ultimate goal of depopulating Gaza. They initially had this plan to force people out into Egypt and other places, into the Sinai, but that's not happening. So to try to get people to leave in different ways and cause as much destruction to the infrastructure as possible, infrastructure that sustains life. We saw the simultaneous attacks on hospitals, food, schools, you name it. These are the things that sustain life. And if they're no longer there, how can people live, continue to survive after the bombing stop? So even if Israel stops bombing, likely people will not be able to continue living there, and a great portion of them may have to leave.
What is your analysis of what we've been seeing out of northern Gaza recently? Scenes of men taken away from their families, stripped, driven off in the backs of trucks to unknown locations. How should we read that?
This is a way to try to break the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, break them into submission, to say that, resisting, revolting is not, fighting back is not going to save you. You need full submission, surrender. It's a type of psychological warfare, a type of what they call psychological operations, to humiliate them, to parade them around to the world as naked. These are all against international law. These are war crimes to do that to people, and at the end to say, well, oh, they're not Hamas, by the way. So these are ways to try to tell people in Gaza that no one is safe and no place is safe, that you should just leave. And at the same time, to send a message to others in the area that they're not going to stop, that they're trying to force their way, the international community and people in the region should take in the Gazan refugees and disperse them and take them out of Gaza.
Talking about Hamas, talking about other armed groups operating in Gaza, I mean, it's difficult right now to gauge where public opinion in Gaza lies in response to those groups. How much support is there, do you think?
Support for the militant groups that are fighting back. I think people are they're too busy trying to survive. When they're trying to survive and they're being bombed at, their common enemy right now are the people that are killing them. And the people that are killing them and killing all these civilians, and especially children in Gaza, is the Israeli military. And right now, I think that's what they're focused on, and they're trying to make it out alive. And they, at this point, don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's really sad that the international community is they're in action, unable to step in, and it's a shame on these international institutions.
I wanted to ask you about the poet Refaat Al-Arya, who was killed in an Israeli strike. He's among a number of poets, artists, other creative voices who have been killed during this conflict. What does it mean, as somebody who's spoken to him, for the world to lose a voice like that right now?
I mean, as people describe this was a giant. This was the voice of Gaza. This is a voice of the Palestinians. He's taught so many people. He's seen as a giant, person that was teaching English literature. And this is just another way to try to silence the Palestinians, that narrative does not get out. Every day, multiple times a day, Refaat Al-Arya was on television stations, on radio shows, speaking out, telling and sharing what was happening to Western audiences, to English-speaking media. And they wanted to silence him. And make no mistake about it, everyone that's killed in Gaza is done deliberately. There are no mistakes, as we've seen in different reports that are coming out of Israeli media, that these are deliberate. They know who they're killing, and they know when they're killing them. So this is a way just to silence more Palestinians and the voice of Palestinians, because international sentiments are shifting away and have shifted away from against Israel, and they're trying to silence any other narrative other than theirs.
But there is, of course, only one diplomatic voice, it appears, that Israel will listen to, the United States. The US has been a little bit cagey about the kind of continued diplomatic support it will give to Israel regarding this conflict. At least the military, at least the weapons are still arriving there, at least in large numbers. $14.5 billion worth of arms, military aid sent to Israel. But what does the fact that Israel is continuing in the way it is say about US influence over Israel going forward?
Well, the problem is the Biden administration at the beginning of this gave a full support, full throttle, support for the Netanyahu government, what they're doing. And now they're trying to rein it in. In a way, they enabled a monster and they can't pull him back because of what they're doing there. So they're in a difficult situation. They don't want to seem that they're flip-flopping and they're wavering, especially during the election cycle. But there's too much at stake now, and the United States are losing allies all over, and pressure is mounting, not just internationally, but even within the Democratic Party themselves. Not everybody in the government is on board with what's happening. As we've seen, the State Department diplomats are speaking out and saying this can't continue. However, the Israeli lobby is applying full force pressure to try to make sure that the Biden administration continues to provide that support. But I think it's a matter of time when they do pull the plug, because this is going to be Joe Biden's legacy at the end, this carnage that we're seeing in Gaza.
Of course, this US election year, the presidential race is underway. How much of all of this discussion, how much of what's happening in Gaza is factored into the political debate there in the US?
For the common person, they don't have, for the common American, they're concerned about the economy, they're concerned about feeding their families. But for the political establishment and for the lobbies and for the people that fund some of these elections, this is a big part of it, and they're putting a lot of pressure, and the Biden administration doesn't want to take any chances. And as you can see, Democrats and Republicans don't agree on much in Washington. However, this is one thing that the majority do agree on, which is actually out of touch with the American public. The American public wants to see a ceasefire. Some 70% of the people in America want a ceasefire, but the politicians are not listening to them so far.
Right, so a widening gap between the public and
Correct.
the politicians on Gaza. Ahmed Bedier, great to hear your thoughts and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you so much.